Hey guys, okay, for those of you who have seen my previous video, which is part one of this Where We Are, How We Got Here, and How We're Going to Get Out of This Mess series, this is not the part two. This is in fact not even new information. I just realized that I kind of buried the lead with that first one, so I'm trying to get a shorter video together that just gives the core nugget of the problem that we're facing and how we're going to deal with that problem. So problem in a nutshell is that we have asymptomatic spreading. That means that we can be sick and not know it, and during that time we can be spreading the virus and not know it. Just some quick data to back that up. This is from March 24th, NewScientist. They're reporting a study done by Columbia University in New York, and this is repeating data that's already been done in China and Europe previously, so we've got reasonably high confidence in the numbers that the data is giving us now. That study concluded that 86% of the cases were undocumented, which will likely end up being the case here in North America as well, because that's the asymptomatic population, so the people that don't come in to get tested because they never have symptoms and never know they have the disease, or the very mild symptoms groups. And those are the ones that we're telling to go home and self-isolate for 14 days because we have restrictions in our number of tests and our testing capability right now. So if we assume the same rough estimates, we find that although those people are only 55% as contagious as people with symptoms, they have thus far accounted for 79% of further infections. Now, this is the data from the Wuhan outbreak. However, we are starting to find that this is consistent in a lot of the other numbers that are starting to come in. So let's ignore the 79 itself. Let's just look at the fact that what this is showing us is that the bulk of infections are not being passed by people with heavy symptoms, which makes perfect sense because people with heavy symptoms have already been checked into the hospital and are isolated, for lack of a better term. The people with no symptoms or with very mild symptoms are the ones that are continuing to go about their daily lives under our social distancing restrictions. And they're the ones that don't realize that they're spreading this around while doing that. Okay, so a situation where we have asymptomatic spread, we've got to follow these three steps. Assume that you're already both infected and contagious. Assume that you don't want to spread the virus any further to other people, and act accordingly in that at all times. Now, our official information is a little bit of a contradiction in that at the moment. We are being told that masks are not useful for people that are not showing any symptoms. However, they are useful for people that are showing symptoms as a way of reducing spread. Now, because we're not focusing on the asymptomatic group right now, because we're not treating them as the bulk of the problem, we are saying that not everyone has to wear a mask because we are only worried about the symptomatic spread people. The real reason behind this is not because that particular logic makes a ton of sense. It's because we have a shortage of N95 masks and hospital grade or even industrial grade masks in general. So at the moment, we're really pushing the fact that all of those professionally made masks need to go to medical professionals, and that is truly the case. But we do have other options here, and we really need to take those options, because right now we're just doing social distancing, and it turns out that 2 meters is likely not enough. Again, this data has been repeated in various different places. The particular study that they're talking about was from MIT. They're showing that viral droplets from coughs and sneezes can move up to 10 to 30 meters per second. Oops, sorry about the highlighting there. and they create a cloud that can span approximately 7 to 8 meters. So that's 23 feet to 27 feet, which is considerably more distance than we're setting aside in our current social distancing measures. So we've got to figure a way to up that. And complex problems require simple solutions. The simple solution is a face mask for everyone. This is directly out of the Peak Prosperity YouTube channel. I'll talk more about them in a second. This is from Wired. It's time to face facts. Masks work. I found this while I was making, in fact, it got printed online while I was making my video yesterday. So again, the masks we're talking about are not the professionally made masks. All of those have to be going to medical institutions right now. They absolutely need them more than we do. However, our options are these little masks, these little homemade cotton masks. We use our ripped clothing, we use our ripped sheets, we use the old stuff that we'd normally donate. Go online, find a pattern, start sewing them. Every single one of us in the population is going to need to have multiples of these things. The reason for that, because a cotton mask, even though it's not an N95 mask and does not filter the air in the same way that an N95 mask does, still has its uses. It will reduce the chances of asymptomatic spread, because if we know the bulk of the asymptomatic spread comes out of those coughs and sneezes, and we're including here clearing your throat when you have some dust in it, sneezing because of your allergies. If you don't know that you have the disease, those normal events are the same as someone who knows they have the disease coughing without covering their face. Like, we need other options that will help us deal with the fact that subconsciously, if we don't have symptoms, we don't feel like we have to be as careful. And that's just part of human nature. A cotton mask will deal with that. If we have a cotton mask in front of our face and we cough or sneeze or whatever, the bulk of that gets caught in the mask. If we get into the habit of anytime that happens, we take the mask off, we put it away for later washing and reuse, we take a clean one out of our pocket where we constantly store an extra 3 or 4 of them, put that clean mask on, we've now trapped any potential viral load in the previous mask, and it will never make it to someone's lungs because it'll get destroyed in the washing machine. So we reduce the chance of asymptomatic spread even with a simple cotton mask. Number 2, it reduces the chances of touching your face, which should be painfully obvious. If you have fabric over your mouth and nose, you're going to have a more difficult time touching your mouth and nose. I realize that our officials are currently making arguments to the contrary. They are likely trying to base these arguments on wearing something like an N95 mask that has to be of a certain tightness to be effective, which makes them less comfortable and causes us to move them around more often. If we're talking a cotton mask that we make at home, we can customize these things to fit our faces completely. Therefore, that's no longer an issue. Logical. If there's cotton there, you can't stick your finger up your nose without thinking really hard about it. Number 3, this is slightly more complicated, but still simple logic. These masks are not going to make us invulnerable to infection. They're not filtering the air in the same way as an N95. However, they are still filtering the air to a small degree. So if we assume that we're out shopping and someone coughs and sneezes in our direction and they haven't had a chance for whatever reason to cover it with hand, elbow, whatever, we now have viral load heading straight at us at high speed. If we breathe in, we get 100% of that potential viral load if we have nothing at all in front of our face. If we have anything at all in front of our face, cotton mask, tissue paper, whatever, then some of that potential viral load will get caught on that surface and can then be trapped, washed, thrown out, whatever. All this is doing is reducing the number of viruses that we have a chance of breathing in. It's not making us invincible to the chance of infection, but it is most definitely reducing the number of particles that actually infect us at the time of infection. And because viruses work through an exponential growth factor, if we have even 80 viruses that make it past the mask versus 100 viruses making it past the mask, just using the 80%, 100% to make it easy, then if they both start at the same time, the 80 viruses, as they replicate over time, will never catch up to the 100 viruses. It's like the younger sibling trying to catch up to the older sibling. It's just never going to happen as time progresses. So if we can have lower viral loads at the infection time, we have better chances of not letting these infections get to the serious critical death point. Okay, we need to start thinking of face masks like we think of pants. If you're not wearing them, you're in public, you are doing it wrong. I've talked already about Peak Prosperity. They've got a guy named Chris that's doing daily updates. Pretty much all of the info in this particular nutshell is straight from one of their daily updates. They showed me the two first articles. They've given a lot of sayings in this. We need to be passing this information around because we need the weapons that we can find, and face masks are turning out to be a really effective weapon. We're going to get the messaging changed from our officials shortly. I wish it would be immediately, but we need to be ready when that message changes so that we're not going through the normal process of swearing at government for changing their minds instead of being on board as to why they're changing their minds. So our mission now is face masks. If you know how to sew, sew face masks. If you don't know how to sew, learn how to sew, sew face masks. If you learn how to sew and realize you really cannot sew, that's okay. Find fabric to donate to people who can sew to make face masks, and find other people that can sew to make face masks. And if nothing else, pass the word along, and for God's sake, wash your hands and wash your cell phone and wash your surfaces, because all of these weapons we need to use together, and we need to use them all the time. Okay, I'm going back to making my video 2 of the original section. As always, I'm going to link everything I've talked about below. Thank you guys for listening. Please spread the word, and I will be back with more information soon. Stay safe, everyone. I'll talk to you soon.